Mel Kiper has released his 2024 NFL draft grades. So we're going to see the grade he gave for the Browns, and I'll react to the write up and the reasoning he gave to it. But draft grades are a funny thing because fan bases get very defensive and very upset if you don't give the player or the team an A. And if you don't give them an A, then you're an automatic hater. So draft grades ultimately are one of the silliest things we do, but we all search for it and love seeing them, even though you can't even prove whether or not that was a fair grade or an accurate grade. Not even just for another year or two, but I think you need to go back like after 3 or 4 years to have a really good representation of that draft class. But let's look at the Browns 2024 NFL draft class, which the Mel Kiper grade, by the way, was a C plus for these selections. Michael Hall, Zak Zinter, Jamari Thrash, Nathaniel Watson, Myles Harden, and Jowon Briggs. So, how would you grade the Browns draft class? A, B, C, D, or F? Let me know in the comment section below how you would grade what the Browns made in the 2024 draft. Here's what Mel Kiper wrote. I'm usually a believer in taking the best prospect available within reason at most times. Don't reach for a need, but when a team doesn't have a first-round pick, it becomes necessary to make sure it gets a guy who can plug a hole at a priority position. I say all of this because there were several really good running backs and receivers available when the Browns drafted defensive tackle Michael Hall Jr. Looking at this roster, I would have gone a different direction. Now, Andrew Berry does not reach for a need. We have seen him take the best player available multiple times in previous drafts, even though the Browns didn't need that guy. When they took Martin Emerson, like go back in time to the moment they drafted him, they had recently drafted Greg Newsome in round 1. Not too long ago, Denzel Ward in round 1. Not very long ago, Greedy Williams in round 2. They didn't need a corner, but ultimately Barry thought that was just too good of a prospect to pass on in round 3. So I'm sure that some people that are not really like too in touch with the Browns will look at their roster and go, they really needed a wide receiver or a running back, and there may be levels of truth to it, but those who actually watch the team and cover the team knew that wide receiver, and this is what I've been saying for weeks leading up to the draft, was not a big of a need, as big of a need as other people outside of Cleveland may have thought. Now, they did pass on some running backs that maybe they go back and regret. Trey Benson, Blake Corum, those two guys went not long after the Browns picked at 54, and then they picked at 85 again, and they could have had Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving, Will Shipley, Ray Davis. A lot of those guys went in round 4 where the Browns did not have a pick. And maybe if Cleveland was in round 4, they would have taken one of those running backs. As for the wide receivers they passed on, remember, they picked at 54. They could have had Malachi Corley or any of these players. And then they picked at 85 again, so one after Roman Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they passed on Jalen McMillan, Luke McCaffrey, Troy Franklin, Javon Baker, and Tez Walker for a second time before their next pick in round number 5. I don't think the Browns are completely out of the woods when it comes to passing on a running back. I would believe / hope that them not going running back at all in the draft is a very good sign and indication that Nick Chubb will be coming back sooner rather than later. But if they didn't factor in Nick Chubb's return at all into their draft process, that would be a spot where we can look back at and go, ooh, maybe that was a little bit of an oversight. I know you want to go best player available. I say I want to put that on my tombstone. But when you've got a well-oiled machine offensively and the only question mark is, when is the running back going to be healthy? I think it's fair to maybe target that position around earlier than you would have liked. More on Kiper, by the way. Hall's tape at Ohio State was maddening at times because he didn't consistently produce. He went a little high based on my rankings. I did like the selection of guard Zak Zinter, who will add some youth to Cleveland's O-line. I'm going to side with Mel Kiper on the Mike Hall selection. Is it my favorite pick Andrew Berry's ever made? No, it's not. Does that mean it's a bad pick? No, it does not. But the Browns, and you can look at Mike Hall's stats there, they don't really jump out to you. 24 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Those aren't the types of numbers that you're like foaming at the mouth for. But the Browns, they always tend to pursue physical traits. And Michael Hall is under 300 pounds. He's 20 years old, and he had a very impressive 40-yard dash, 3-cone, all those athletic and agility testing from the NFL Combine, where Andrew Berry looks at Jim Schwartz and thinks, I give you that guy, will you actually turn that dump truck into a Ferrari? Because it hasn't really happened with the last one. But my concern is I always look at defensive linemen and pass rushers as guys that in college need to produce. That's not the same for running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, because those players are very dependent on other players to be successful. So looking at their stats does not give you the best accurate representation. But defensive linemen, it's usually just mano a mano in college football. And what I did was I looked back at the NFL draft in round 2, where they got Michael Hall, from 2010 to 2020, 10-year span, and I looked at all the defensive tackles that were picked in round 2 in those years that had fewer than 35 tackles in their final season in college. Keep in mind, Michael Hall just had, 25, 26 tackles last year at Ohio State? And this is the list. It's a very short list of guys that went round 2 and had fewer than 35 tackles in their final season. Malik McDowell, of course, Browns legend for one season until he did a very bad thing at Chuck E. Cheese. 2016, Adam Gotsis. No one knows who that is. 2012, Jarrell Worthy. No one knows who that is. 2010, Terrence Cody. No one knows who that is. So history says going after defensive tackles in round 2 that don't have a lot of production from their college days doesn't work out the best. Now, I think there's a very low floor, kind of high ceiling with Michael Hall, but personally, I would have gone a different direction at pick 54. Hopefully, the Browns made the right pick, and we'll look back at this as an all-time steal and a gem of the draft. But as things stand right now, my honest opinion is this is not a pick that I am over the moon about. Doesn't mean it's a horrible, awful selection. Just means that at 54, which, by the way, when you pick at 54, it's not easy to find really good players. You're no longer in the top 50 of the draft. Some of the prospects have bigger question marks than earlier in the draft. So it's already an uphill battle for Cleveland. Now, before we look at the rest of Mel Kiper's write-up, I do want to tell everyone watching about our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you want to go see a playoff Cavs game, a Guardians game, or any other sporting event, concert, comedy show in your local area, download the Game Time app today and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. I love this deal because it's kind of like Game Time is just going to pay for your parking, your concession run, and with $20 off, I'd rather have it than not have it. So if you want to go see a sporting event or anything else in your area, get started with Game Time today. Download the app and use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video because I'm sure you guys already forgot it. But download Game Time today. It's the best place for last-minute seats at the lowest price guaranteed. Now, the other pick the Browns made in day 2 was offensive guard from Michigan, Zak Zinter, which right now doesn't have a very obvious spot high in the depth chart. I think he's probably not even the first guy off the bench. If an injury were to pop up between Bitonio and Teller, it would probably be Michael Dunn at guard and maybe Luke Whippler at center. But I really do like the Zak Zinter pick for 2025 and beyond. One, Zinter as a prospect, 4-year starter at right guard, 2-time first-team All-Big Ten, and last year for the Wolverines gave up 0 sacks and 0 penalties. Now, he is unfortunately coming off a brutal leg injury, but if the Browns, which they do, can be patient with him since they don't need him to start or even really be like the true backup for NFL Week 1, I think this is a pick great for the future. And how many times did I share this graphic with you guys on screen throughout the entire pre-draft process? You look at 2025, and remember, GMs, they are not just drafting for this upcoming season. They are thinking 1 year down the road because baseball has farm systems. NHL has farm systems. There's no farm system in the National Football League. But what GMs like to do is think, all right, next year at this time, what position could I be drafting for that I need that guy to then go out and start? And instead of asking a rookie in rounds 2, 3, or 4 to be a week 1 starter, how about I go get that guy this year and have him practice and kind of redshirt for a season, and in 2025, he could be ready to roll. So with Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio both having big cap hits in 2025. I know these are two Browns offensive line legends, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think the Zak Zinter pick definitely signals really good player and maybe a future potential need at offensive guard if the Browns have a cap casualty in their sights. Now, who was the better pick in your eyes, Zak Zinter or Michael Hall? Let me know in the comment section below which of these picks you liked more. More from Kiper. The Browns finally addressed the wide receiver position in round 5 with Jamari Thrash, who had some issues with concentration drops but was productive in his lone season at Louisville. Nathaniel Bookie, what an all-time nickname, Watson, is a long-armed linebacker with the tenacity to make a team because of his special teams ability. Here, let's talk about Jamari Thrash first. He started off at Georgia State, awesome player in the Sun Belt, transfers to Louisville for one season, and does great things for the Cardinals up until the end of the year where, unfortunately, a broken hand cut his season short. 5'11", 188 pounds at the combine, ran a really solid 4.46 40-yard dash. So not the fastest guy in the draft, but definitely far from the slowest, above average. Like, looking at percentile-wise, he would definitely be in the upper echelon. Solid route runner, but when contact comes aboard, it can be a bit of an issue. And that's where the concentration can come in, like not having the biggest frame in the world. If you start hearing footsteps, can you start to pick your eyes up a little bit knowing, hey, I'm not really built to take big hits. But if he can work past that and maybe add a little bit of LBS to his frame, I could see this being a really fun pick for the Browns. He does have some yak ability, which when you look at the Browns wide receiver room, that was the only thing they really needed to add. It was someone who, with the ball in his hands, can pick up a gutsy first down. Now, the next guy is Nathaniel Watson, the Mississippi State linebacker. I guess we'll start calling him Bookie now. If I've got any Bulldogs fans, let me know what he really goes by. But last year, 137 tackles, back-to-back 100-plus tackle seasons, 13 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. So there's no question about the production ability here. And from a physical makeup standpoint, pretty solid, 6'2", 233 pounds, 4.63, 40-yard dash. He doesn't have cinder block for feet. He's not undersized. He has production. He may not be the best athlete we've seen, but why is he falling to round 5? Well, despite being a 3-year starter, there are some concerns about his maturity off the field. I don't want to just completely sour the guy's name because he just got drafted and this is an awesome week for him, but if you want to do your own research, you can find out that he had some run-ins with the law and whatnot, and hopefully he's grown up from that and he's ready to be an adult. But the Browns have been down this path before with a day 3 pick on defense specifically that never really grew up and didn't mature, and he was gone after one season. I hope that's not the case for Watson because I think he can be a really special player in this linebacker room. Kiper also wrote, Cleveland didn't take a running back, so maybe Nick Chubb will be back healthy to start the season, and things will be okay. I would have added some depth. I would have added some insurance, though, based on the depth of the class. Fingers crossed that Nick Chubb is returning sooner rather than later. I don't want to use the draft as an absolute certified guarantee that this means Chubb is going to be ready to roll within the first weeks of the season. That could be the case, but I don't think Andrew Berry would use the draft that way. He never likes reaching on players. So if he doesn't love a running back, he's not going to take one because Nick Chubb could miss a little bit of the early portion of the season. I think Berry's got more confidence in Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman than maybe you and I do. Now, I do want to share this tweet I saw from Tony Grossi, who said, all those people who said Browns would take a running back or needed to take a running back, you were wrong. How can you say by right now you are wrong for the Browns needing to take a running back? We will not know whether or not that was a good decision to pass on a running back until we get probably halfway through the season. If the season begins and the Browns don't have Nick Chubb for the first 4, 5, 6, however many weeks, and Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman are two of the worst running back tandems in the league, and the Browns are towards the bottom in the league of rushing, don't you think it'd be pretty fair to look back at the draft and if you see some other guys the Browns passed on balling out at their new teams, you could say, well, maybe the Browns should have taken him. So I don't know how you can say you were wrong for saying the Browns need to take a running back. We have no idea whether or not the Browns need to take a running back because we have not seen the 2024 Browns play a single snap. Now, should the Browns have drafted a running back? D for draft or P for pass? Get in the comment section below and let me know whether or not the Browns should have taken a running back. Now, I just want to share with you guys the remaining Mel Kiper draft grades in case you're wondering. He's always pretty chalky with these. I don't think he actually really enjoys doing this, but ESPN's got a gun to his head because they know it gets clicks. Cardinals, Eagles both got A's. Steelers got A-. The Steelers and the Ravens, they're always going to draft well. I liked the Commanders draft a lot as well. Texans, that kind of rounds out the Deshaun Watson trade. So we'll see who comes out on top in a few years. Chiefs, Chargers get B pluses along with the Rams. The Bills got a B. Bears and Bengals got Bs. Everyone got a B, basically. This was very lack of effort, I think, put into it. But, yeah, draft grades are some of the silliest things we do. And everyone's in agreement that, like, they're dumb. But at the same time, we're all two-faced because we all do search for draft grades. We may not be public about it. You may not broadcast it. But I guarantee at some point when you've been on the toilet the last 24 hours, you Googled Browns draft grades. I want to see what other people had to say about this team's draft. Some quick stadium news I want to relay to you guys, and then we'll probably do a more in-depth video on it later on in the week. The Browns met with state lawmakers this past week regarding a proposal for a stadium in Brook Park. Not too many details have come out from it, but it's looking like the Browns want to proceed with a dome stadium. And the city of Cleveland can definitely make a push. This is a game of checkers. Nothing is set in stone. But the Chicago Bears, they held a bit of a press conference, a presentation, if you will, and they unveiled stadium plans in downtown Chicago when all the signs were the Bears were going to go to their version of a Brook Park in Arlington Heights outside of the city. And then the city of Chicago kind of upped its game a little bit. That's not set in stone, but the price tag is not cheap. It's like $3+ billion, with the Chicago Bears kicking in $2 billion, but needing over $1 billion from the city, the county, and the state. Are the Browns going to get over $1 billion from the city, county, and state? We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's pick a card to get you guys on your way. I got producer Trace hanging out with me today. What do you want to go with, bud?
I'm going to go with the 9 of hearts today.
9 of hearts. Give me the 6 of diamonds. I think this one recently popped up. 3 of diamonds. 3 of diamonds. All right. That will do it for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you all later and enjoy the rest of your Monday.